Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I never liked silence. Not the kind that wrapped around you like a warm blanket, but the kind that hummed just beneath your skin. The kind that settled in after the laughter's gone and only the echo remains, reminding you what used to be there. That was the kind of silence I'd been coming home to lately. Kara wasn't cold, not exactly. She still greeted me with a smile most nights, kiss on the cheek, a soft, hey babe, like nothing was wrong. But it was too smooth. Practiced. Like muscle memory rather than instinct. She said the right words, touched the right places, but her eyes, they were always somewhere else. At first, I tried not to overthink it. People go through phases. Relationships ebb and flow. We'd been together 6 years, married for 4. That's long enough for comfort to feel like complacency if you're not paying attention. But I was paying attention. It started with her phone, how it never left her hand anymore. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it slept beside her on the nightstand, screen down, even though she claimed she hated the blue light. Notifications always came through silent now, just subtle vibrations that she'd read without unlocking the screen. Then there was the wardrobe change. Kara's always dressed well, she had style, but it used to be more casual, like she dressed for herself. Lately, she looked like she was auditioning. Tight pencil skirts, heels just high enough to say she wasn't trying too hard, and lipstick she hadn't worn in 2 years. She'd twirl in the mirror and say it was because of the new team at work, that she needed to re-establish authority. Sure, I didn't say anything. Not at first. I just watched. That's what you do when you feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. You don't jump, you listen for the cracks. Then came the Thursday night she said she was going out with her new coworkers. I won't be late, she said, applying mascara in the hallway mirror. It's just drinks. You'd hate it, networking types. I didn't say I was invited. I didn't say I wanted to come. I watched her leave in a perfume cloud that wasn't meant for me. When she got back, just before midnight, she tried to tiptoe through the bedroom like I was asleep. I wasn't. I listened to her undress slowly, slipping out of that red blouse she never wore for me, humming to herself like it had been a good night. It wasn't until I smelled his cologne on her hair that I made the decision. No accusations. No confrontations. I wasn't going to yell, throw things, or beg. I wasn't raised that way. I was going to confirm everything quietly, and when I did, I'd bury them both under the weight of their own arrogance. The next day, I went to the garage, dug through my old tool chest, and pulled out the black box I hadn't touched since college. A slim, clip-on voice recorder. Back then, I used it to record interviews for journalism school. Now it would serve a much darker purpose. I installed it under the dashboard of her car before she left for work. I told her I was just checking the tire pressure. Those winter roads are rough on sidewalls. She smiled, kissed me on the jaw, and drove off with my recording device riding shotgun. That evening, I listened. And what I heard took every suspicion I tried to bury and drove them straight through my ribs. It wasn't just the flirting. It wasn't just the laugh she gave when he complimented her perfume or how she called him babe, without hesitation. It was the way she talked about me. So, he doesn't suspect anything? The man asked, his voice smug, syrupy with confidence. No, Kara giggled. He's too polite. Too trusting. It's kind of adorable, really. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The recording ended with her inviting him over to our house next week, when I'd be at that training seminar for work. I wasn't going to that seminar. I had never registered. I just listened. And smiled. Let them think I was polite. Let them believe I wouldn't fight. That's the problem with people who underestimate you. They forget how dangerous a man can be once he's stopped pretending he's not watching. Thursday arrived with an unsettling stillness. The kind of silence you hear in the eye of a storm. Kara left for work in a rush that morning, barely glancing at me as she grabbed her coat. I handed her a coffee I made out of habit, and she gave me a distracted thanks without meeting my eyes. She was nervous. Not in the obvious, twitchy way. No, she was too practiced for that. But I'd spent years memorizing her. She had tells. The slight hitch in her breathing. The way she smoothed her hair twice instead of once. She thought I was leaving town today. She thought she'd have the house to herself by evening. She was wrong. Around noon, I packed a small duffel and left it in my trunk, just for show. I even pulled out of the driveway and circled the block a few times before parking down the street. Then I walked back, cutting through the neighbor's yard, slipping into the backyard and through the garage door I deliberately left unlatched. Inside, I turned off every camera except the one they didn't know about, hidden in a hollowed-out wall sconce in the dining room. It had a clean view of the kitchen table. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:42 p.m., I heard the garage door were open. Then came the laughter, hers first, then his. They were laughing about the gate keypad. Apparently, I hadn't changed the code since we moved in. Kara's voice was high-pitched, anxious. She was trying too hard. "I told you, he's gone till Sunday night," she whispered. "He never cancels those work retreats." Smug bastard chuckled as he dropped his keys on the counter. "That's because he's predictable. You married a walking beige sweater." I didn't move. I was in the guest bedroom, the door slightly cracked, just enough to hear. They made themselves comfortable like they'd done this before. He poured wine, my wine. Opened a bottle I'd been saving for our anniversary. He even used the decanter Kara had once bought and never touched. They talked about their week. About me. "He's been distant lately," she said, feigning sadness as she leaned into him. "I think he senses something, but he won't say it. He's too polite." And there it was again, that word. Like it was a flaw. Like not screaming and breaking things made me weak. He smirked. "That's why he's losing you." "No," she murmured, running her finger along the rim of her glass. "He lost me a long time ago." And then the silence that followed. That charged pause between two people about to cross a line they thought they'd already stepped over. I walked into the room before they could make it official. "Hope I'm not interrupting," I said. They both jumped. Kara's face turned the color of drying plaster. Lover boy, though, he was slower to process it. First the shock, then confusion, then the smirk again. "You're supposed to be out of town," Kara stammered. I lied. "Flight got delayed. Thought I'd surprise you." "Clearly," the guy muttered, trying to reassemble his ego. "Listen, man, I don't want any drama." "You already brought it in," I said, calmly walking to the counter, grabbing a glass, and pouring myself some of my own wine. "You're drinking my Cabernet. At my table. With my wife. So I'd say you came prepared." He squared up a little then, shoulders rolling like he'd been waiting for a chance to posture. He was younger than me. Built lean, but soft. Gym strong, not pain-tested. Kara whispered something to him, probably about staying calm, about defusing things. But this guy, he was too stupid to realize he wasn't in control anymore. "You have two choices," he said, standing now. "You can walk, or you can fight. But either way, she's not going home with you tonight." I didn't blink. I set the wine glass down slowly, gently enough not to make a sound. Then I turned to face him, hands loose at my sides. I looked him over like I was studying a floor plan. How wide were his shoulders? How far back would his head snap if I drove my palm into his chin? Which molars could he lose before he'd need implants? Could I break his ribs without breaking a sweat? I wasn't going to swing first. Not yet. I wanted to enjoy this moment. "You really think you're making decisions here?" I asked, stepping into his space. "You came into my home, opened my wine, and dared to talk about what you're taking from me?" He scoffed, but I could see the tremor in his jaw. "You've got the wrong idea." "No," I cut in, sharper now. "You've got the wrong house." He stepped back slightly, bumping into the chair. Kara reached for his arm. "Let's just go. It's over." But I wasn't done. "No, Kara. Not yet. He came in here thinking I wouldn't fight. But here's the thing. I don't start fights. I finish them. And before I send Demolition Night into motion, I like to know exactly what I'm breaking." I leaned forward, voice low enough that only he could hear the next part. "You've got about 30 seconds to decide how many teeth you want to keep." He blinked. That smirk vanished. Kara's hand shook. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They walked out. Not fast enough for my taste. He turned once at the door, like he might say something clever. But all that came out was a nervous breath. I let the silence swallow them whole. I didn't follow. I didn't yell. I just picked up his half-full glass, walked it to the sink, and dumped it out like it was trash water. Then I smiled. Let them think this was over. Let them run. The best part about Demolition Night? It doesn't start with noise. It starts with removal. And I'd only just begun clearing the debris. The next morning, Kara texted me like she was reaching across a crack in the ice. "Can we talk?" I left it on read. Let her feel that silence for a change. Let her sit with what it means when I'm not the one holding the bridge together. She hadn't even tried to explain the night before. No shock. No denial. Just a panicked glance at the man who wasn't half the threat she thought I was. He didn't raise his voice, but he lowered her chances of crawling out of this with her dignity. That was fine. I didn't want her to explain. I already had everything I needed. While she was sleeping with a smirk beside that idiot, I'd been building a digital war chest, Screenshots, bank records, timestamped text from the voice recorder, images from the dining room cam. I had footage of her pouring wine, whispering behind my back, laughing as she said I was too polite to ever leave. She didn't know it yet, but I'd already changed the locks by sunrise. By noon, I was sitting across from my attorney, Janine, a woman whose handshake felt like a final verdict. "You sure you don't want to play the long game?" she asked, reviewing the USB drive I handed her. "No," I said. "I don't want revenge. I want results." She smirked. "You'll get both." We filed the papers that afternoon. I paid extra to have them expedited. Meanwhile, I made a few calls Kara never expected me to make. To her boss at the marketing firm where she paraded around like a queen. To the mutual friend she thought would always take her side. To the financial institution where we had a joint investment account that I had quietly frozen. She wasn't going to walk out of this untouched. At 6:04 p.m., her phone lit up with a series of alerts. Account access denied. Keycard rejected at her office building. An email forward from Janine's paralegal, petition for divorce, irreconcilable differences, with attached supporting evidence. I waited. She didn't call. She showed up. Knocked on the front door like a stranger, wearing that same red blouse. Only this time, she looked like someone trying to rewind time with a weak smile. "Can we please talk inside?" she asked, voice trembling just enough to almost make me believe she still had a soul. I stepped aside. Let her walk in. But I didn't sit down. "You changed the locks," she said. "You changed the marriage," I replied. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand," she offered. "It wasn't serious." "No," I said calmly. "It was humiliating. That's worse." She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand and held up my phone. I played the audio. "He doesn't suspect a thing. He's just too polite." Her face cracked. "You recorded me?" "I protected myself," I said. "There's a difference. You were making decisions for both of us. I just decided to make a few of my own." She tried to pivot, dropping into the chair across from me, hands folded. "Look, I made a mistake." "No. A mistake is forgetting to text. You planned this." She exhaled, looking away, ashamed. "Or pretending to be. So what now? You going to tell everyone?" I walked to the table, picked up a manila folder, and tossed it in front of her. She flipped it open. Her face went pale. Screenshots. Timeline. Photos. The receipts of a crumbling castle she thought she was building in secret. "I already did," I said. "I sent everything to your parents, your sister, and your boss." "The man you've been seeing?" "His girlfriend got the same file this morning." "You're trying to ruin me," she said, voice cracking. "No," I replied, my voice like granite. "You did that. I'm just pulling back the curtain." She didn't cry. Not yet. Kara never cried right away. She calculated too much. "Please, don't do this to me," she whispered. "I don't have anywhere else to go." I stared at her. Not with hatred. Not with pity. With clarity. That's not my problem anymore. Then I stood. And she knew. Demolition night wasn't a single event. It was a series of strategic removals, support beams pulled one by one until the whole thing caved in. And now, she was watching it collapse. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I simply walked to the door and opened it. "For what it's worth," I said, "you were right about one thing." She looked up. "I am polite. But only until I'm not." Then I closed the door behind her. And locked it. 3 days. That's how long it took for the first domino to fall. Kara's name disappeared from the team lead's page of her company website. I didn't have to guess why. HR doesn't like public scandals, especially when they come wrapped in high heels and self-righteous arrogance. Turns out her new team wasn't impressed by the drama. Neither was her boss, who once pulled me aside at a holiday party and said, "You're a lucky man, Kara knows how to manage perception." Yeah, she did. Until now. I didn't leak the story. I didn't have to. People talk. And when one side keeps quiet while the other spins excuses, the silence becomes louder than the noise. Her lover, Mr. Ultimatum, turned into a ghost. I watched his social media go from filtered bravado to radio silence. No more gym selfies. No brunch pics. Just one vague, dramatic post a few days after they got outed. "You think you know someone?" SMH. Which one of them it was aimed at didn't really matter. Kara moved in with a friend. Maybe the only one she had left. From what I heard, that arrangement didn't last long. Roommates tend to be less generous when you spend your nights pacing and sobbing into wine glasses. I didn't block her number. I wanted to see the decline in real time. I lost my job. My parents won't talk to me. I just need help until I figure this out. Each message more desperate than the last. I responded once. That's not my problem anymore. Same words I'd said at the door. I wanted her to feel how final they were. And the irony? She had always painted me as the weak one. The soft one. She used to tell her friends I was too easygoing to ever leave. But when I left nothing behind. Not even the illusion that she still had power. I'd been smart. Before filing, I transferred my savings into a separate account under a trust. The house was mine before marriage. No kids, no alimony, no leverage. She had no idea how airtight I'd made the escape plan. Her attorney tried to argue mental distress, claimed I orchestrated her collapse. Janine laughed. He didn't orchestrate it. He just watched you do it with a better seat. We settled fast. She had nothing to bargain with. But here's the part that still hits hardest. She didn't cry during the divorce. Not during the hearing. Not when signing the papers. Not when she walked out of the courthouse with cheap sunglasses and a Target handbag instead of the designer one I once bought her in Milan. She cried a week later, when she showed up at my work parking lot like a shadow. Hair pulled back, makeup barely hanging on, voice scratchy like she'd smoked through the past few nights. I miss you, she said, like that could undo everything. You were the only one who ever really saw me. No, I said. I saw who you pretended to be. She reached out, hand trembling, but I stepped back. It's too late, I said. You can't mean that. I smiled. That's the difference between us. I say what I mean. She broke then. Not dramatically. Not movie tears. Just a quiet, collapsed breath. A face folding inward like she was finally seeing the reflection she used to avoid. She left without another word. And I stood there for a minute. Just 1 minute. Letting the wind cut through the silence. Then I got in my car, turned the key, and drove forward without checking the mirror. 6 months later, the house is quieter than I imagined it would be. Not in the lonely way. Not in the echoing through empty halls way. No, this is the kind of quiet that feels earned. Deserved. Like peace finally came home and decided to stay a while. The divorce finalized clean. Clean enough that even Janine was surprised by how fast it moved once Kara realized there was nothing left to squeeze. I kept the house, the car, the savings, the stock she never understood. She walked away with a small severance and a reputation in tatters. I didn't celebrate. I didn't take some victory lap or throw a party. That's not who I am. But I did do one thing. I booked a trip. One of those quiet cabin getaways. No Wi-Fi, no distractions. Just me, a journal, and a whiskey bottle I'd been saving for something real. And on the last night, I lit a fire and poured a glass. Thought about everything. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. That was the real ending. No dramatic confrontation. Just truth. Exposure. Removal. Like rot scraped clean from the walls. She tried reaching out again. Through mutuals, mostly. A cousin. A friend of a friend. Whispered mentions of regret. Of therapy. Of wanting just one conversation. I ignored them. Not out of spite. Out of preservation. I don't owe her anything. Not even a reply. But there was another path I could have taken. If I'd reacted that night with fists instead of silence. If I'd let his smug little ultimatum pull me down into the same pit they were living in. I know how it would have gone. 1 punch, then 2. Maybe he swings back. Maybe the cops show up. Maybe I get a record. Maybe Kara uses that in court to paint me as unstable. She'd cry on cue. Say I was violent, unhinged, a danger to her future. And suddenly I'm the villain in the story they wrote together. I've thought about that version. More than I'd like to admit. But when I imagine it, I don't feel justice. I feel shame. I didn't need to swing. I only needed to show them who the architect really was. I've often imagined a different outcome, one where I stayed a little longer. Where I played dumb, smiled through dinners, kissed her goodnight, and pretended I was still blind. Let them think they'd won. Let them build their future on lies and weakness. And then, once they were comfortable, maybe engaged, maybe moved in, I'd drop everything. Expose every message. Leak every video. Crash every illusion they clung to like it was real. Maybe at their engagement dinner. Maybe on the day they signed a lease. Make it public. Humiliating. Final. Let them watch their new reality crumble under the weight of 1,000 little deceptions. It would have been glorious. Cinematic, even. But it would have meant staying in the filth just a little too long. And I'm glad I didn't. Because some victories come not from what you destroy, but from what you leave behind without looking back. And I never looked back.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.